The Alien Council had never encountered a species that responded to an ultimatum with an invitation to tea. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe for more HFY stories. High Arbiter Valera stood at the observation deck of the Infinite Decree, watching Earth's blue-white sphere rotate beneath her fleet. 23 coalition vessels hung in perfect formation above the planet, their hulls gleaming with the authority of 17 member species and 4,000 years of galactic governance. The Armada's presence alone had brought entire civilizations to their knees. Earth would be no different. The compliance documentation is prepared. High Arbiter, her adjutant, a methodical Quellan named Torvus, announced. His crystalline fingers danced across holographic displays pulling up the final draft. 300 pages covering resource extraction, quotas, population growth limitations, territorial expansion, prohibitions, and mandatory technology sharing protocols. Veller's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Humanity's file had crossed her desk 6 months ago. A species barely 3 centuries into space travel, confined to a single star system, possessing crude faster-than-light capability they'd stumbled upon through what could only be described as reckless experimentation. Their nuclear arsenals were impressive for primitives. Their digital networks charmingly complex, but they lacked any understanding of quantum field manipulation, zero-point energy extraction, or dimensional folding. They were children playing with fire, and the galaxy had rules about children. Their military capabilities, she asked, although she'd memorized the assessment. Minimal threat level, Torvos replied. Approximately 40 vessels of destroyer class or larger concentrated around Earth and Mars. Kinetic weapons fusion drives, electromagnetic shielding, all second-era technology. Their largest ship mass is 800,000 tons. He gestured to the Infinite Decree's specifications hovering nearby. We outmassed their entire fleet combined, and their diplomatic response to our arrival. Unprecedented high orbiter. Torvos's tone carried a note of confusion. They welcomed us, offered full docking privileges at their orbital station, extended an invitation for the Council to meet with their United Earth Assembly in what they call Geneva. He pronounced the human word awkwardly. No defensive posturing, no threat displays. They've been all cooperative. Velshara's secondary eyes narrowed. In 4 decades of diplomatic enforcement, she'd seen every response to coalition arrival. Panic aggression, desperate negotiations, religious fervor, mass evacuations, never cooperation, never calm acceptance. It could be wisdom, offered Cal. Then her military advisor, a scarred Vorthaean, whose species had learned compliance the hard way. They may recognize the futility of resistance. Or ignorance, Feller countered. They may not understand what we're here to do. The communication console chimed. A human face appeared. An older male with gray hair and steady eyes that seemed far too composed for someone facing planetary subjugation. His clothing was simple but formal, a dark suit with a small blue and white emblem on the lapel. Hi, Arbiter Veller, the human said, his voice carrying none of the tremor she expected. I am Secretary General Chen Wei of the United Earth Assembly. Your delegation is expected in Geneva in 4 hours. We have prepared a venue for our discussion. This is not a discussion, Secretary General replied. This is a compliance hearing. Your species has reached the threshold of interstellar capability without proper oversight. The Coalition has drafted terms for Earth's integration into galactic society. I see Chen's expression didn't change. Then we look forward to reviewing your terms. Will you be requiring accommodations for your delegation? Our atmosphere is compatible with most of your species, though we can provide environmental suits if needed. The casual competence in his tone unsettled her. We will arrive as scheduled. Excellent. Oh, Secretary Park will meet you at the landing zone. Oh, and High Arbiter. Chen paused. We've prepared our own documentation as well for the discussion. The channel closed. Silence filled the observation deck. Torvos was the first to speak, their own documentation posturing. Calthan growled. They'll offer token resistance present, meaningless counter-proposals, then accept our terms when they realize they have no leverage. But Valera stared at the planet below, at the lights of human cities glittering across the dark side of their world, at the orbital stations and satellite networks, at the small fleet of human vessels, maintaining a respectful distance from the Coalition Armada. Everything about this felt wrong, not dangerous. Nothing about humanity's technology suggested danger. Just wrong. Scan the system again. She ordered full spectrum analysis. I want to know the location of every human vessel, every weapon platform, every military installation. High Orbiter, we've already conducted 3 comprehensive. Then conduct a 4th. Her voice carried the weight of rank and monitor all human communications. Everything. As her crew scrambled to comply, Velshara watched Earth complete another rotation. Somewhere down there in a city called Geneva, humans were preparing for a meeting that would determine their species' future. They should be terrified. They should be marshaling desperate defenses or preparing panicked surrender offers. Instead, they'd offered tea. The first whisper of unease coiled in Valera's thorax. In 4,000 years, the Coalition had never been wrong about a species' capabilities. But in 4,000 years, the Coalition had never encountered a species quite like this. The infinite decrees sensors swept the Sol system once more, cataloging, measuring, assessing. Somewhere in the data streams and electromagnetic chatter, something waited. Something Velshara couldn't quite identify. Something that made humanity smile while a fleet hung above their world. The Geneva Summit Hall had been built for human diplomacy. High ceilings, natural light filtering through reinforced glass seats arranged in a semicircle that suggested equality rather than hierarchy. Shura found it quaint. The Coalition had conquered species with architecture far more impressive. Her delegation of 12 settled into the oversized chairs humans had provided, each representative carrying data tablets containing Earth's future. Across from them, seven humans sat with an unsettling stillness. Secretary General Chen at the center, flanked by military officers, scientists, and a woman introduced only as Director Sarah Okonkwo, Strategic Intelligence. That last title had been specific. "Shall we begin?" Chen asked, as though this were a trade negotiation rather than a surrender. Veller activated her presentation matrix. Holographic text filled the space between them, paragraph after paragraph of restrictions, quotas, and prohibitions. The Coalition's terms are non-negotiable. Earth will be designated a Class C development world. Your faster-than-light research will be suspended and transferred to Coalition oversight. Your military vessels will be reduced to system defense only. No more than 20 ships, none exceeding 200,000 tons. All your population expansion beyond Earth and Mars will require Coalition approval. Resource extraction from your outer planets will be managed by Question interrupted one of the humans. A younger man introduced as Dr. James Okoye, Xenotechnology Specialist. "You mention our FTL research. Which specific methodology are you referring to?" Veller's mandibles twitched. "Your Alcubierre derivative warp drive, crude but functional." "Ah, Dr. Asterisk," Okoye made a note on his tablet. "And you're aware we've moved beyond that." The room temperature seemed to drop. "Explain," Torvis demanded. "We developed the Alcubierre system 16 years ago," Dr. Okoye said casually. "We've since implemented fold space transit much more efficient. The warp drives are mostly used for in-system cargo transport." Now Velshara felt her secondary hearts accelerate. Fold space was a fourth-era technology. It had taken the Coalition 800 years to develop. "Impossible. Our intelligence indicates your intelligence is outdated." Director Okonkwo said. Her voice was polite, but something in her eyes suggested she knew exactly how outdated. "Please continue with your terms." Velshara forced herself to proceed, but the words felt heavier now. "Your weapons development will be frozen at current levels. All quantum research will be submitted for Coalition review. Your encryption systems will be encryption systems." Chen leaned forward slightly. "That's interesting. Tell me, High Arbiter, how long have you been monitoring our communications?" The question landed like a physical blow. "Standard protocol," Velshara said carefully. "The Coalition monitors all developing species to assess. 6 months, 2 weeks, 3 days." Chen said, "Since your scout ship, the Veiled Observer, entered our system and established a listening post in the Kuiper Belt 17 light hours from Earth. Very thorough work." The air in the room changed. Every Coalition representative went rigid. "You detected our scout ship." Calvin's voice was barely a whisper. The Veiled Observer used 7th-generation stealth technology. It was undetectable to species below 5th-era development. "Detected, tracked, and analyzed," confirmed Admiral Rachel Santos, one of the uniform humans. "Home asterisk. Your hull signature uses quantum state flux to absorb sensor returns. Elegant design. We appreciated studying it." "Studying?" Velshara couldn't finish the sentence. Director Okonkwo tapped her tablet. A holographic display materialized. Not human technology, but Coalition standard formatting. It showed the Veiled Observer's complete specifications. Crew complement, weapon systems, communication protocols, everything. "We've also been monitoring your communications," Okonkwo said pleasantly. "The Infinite Decrees command frequency uses a rotating quantum key encryption. Very secure. It took our systems almost 3 weeks to crack it." 3 weeks. The Coalition's best cryptographers had estimated their quantum key system would take a developing species centuries to break if they even recognized it as encryption. Shura's mind raced. Well, this had to be a bluff. Humans couldn't possibly. Your last transmission to Coalition High Command, Okonkwo, continued sent 4 hours ago, contained your preliminary assessment of Earth's compliance probability. You rated us at 93%, likely to accept your terms without resistance. She smiled. We were curious about the 7%. The silence stretched. Torvis was frantically scanning his data tablet, cross-referencing, checking for leaks. Calvin's battle card hand hovered near his sidearm, though what good a weapon would do against information couldn't imagine. How? The word escaped her before she could stop it. How did we detect your scout ship, Chen asked. Or how did we crack your encryption? Or how did we develop fold space technology 1,000 years ahead of your projected timeline for species like us? He folded his hands calmly. Those are excellent questions, High Arbiter, but perhaps we should address the more immediate concern, which is your fleet. Admiral Santos gestured, and the holographic display shifted. The Sol system appeared rendered in perfect detail. 23 Coalition vessels hung in Earth orbit, exactly where they should be. You have 17 task forces positioned throughout Coalition Space 3, near the border worlds, monitoring for potential threats. 5 conducting trade route security on in various stages of refit or patrol duty. The display zoomed out, revealing Coalition territory in its entirety. Every single task force appeared on the map, marked with current positions, fleet compositions, and command structures. That intelligence is classified at the highest level. Belshara breathed, protected by neural lock protocols. Even most Coalition members don't have access to fleet deployment data. We know, Okono said. We also know about the political crisis on Velkar Prime, your homeworld. High Arbiter, the resource disputes with the Quellan Confederacy, the territorial tensions with the Vorthian military bloc. You're here because the Coalition needs Earth's rare earth elements and our industrial capacity. And you needed a diplomatic victory to shore up your political position. This isn't about protecting the galaxy from dangerous primitives. This is about quotas in politics. Each word was a precision strike. Velshara felt her worldview cracking like stressed crystal. How long? She whispered. How long have you been watching us? Chen exchanged glances with his colleagues. Something passed between them. Not words, but understanding. High Arbiter, he said gently. We need to establish something before we continue. You came here believing you were dealing with a primitive species stumbling into the galactic stage. That assessment was incomplete. We've been watching the Coalition for 42 years, Doctor, Okoy added. Since we developed the sensor technology necessary to detect your vessels, we've studied your technology, your politics, your history. We've learned your languages, all 17 of them. We've mapped your trade routes, analyzed your military doctrines, and assessed your threat potential. Threat potential, Cal then repeated, his voice hollow. Set. You assessed us as a threat. Every unknown is a potential threat. Admiral Santos said, that's basic strategic doctrine. You taught us that. Actually, we learned a lot from monitoring your first contact protocols. Valara's mind was reeling. 42 years. Humanity had been watching the Coalition for 42 years, learning, analyzing, preparing. While the Coalition had dismissed them as primitives, humans had been studying their teachers. The terms you've presented, Chen said, pulling the conversation back to the holographic document still hovering between them, are unacceptable. They presume a power dynamic that doesn't exist. So let me be clear. Earth will not be submitting to Coalition governance. We will not be limiting our expansion, surrendering our technology, or accepting oversight of our development. You have no choice, Velchara said, but her voice lacked conviction. The fleet above your world is surrounded. Director Okonkwo finished. The display changed again. The Sol system reappeared, but this time new markers bloomed across the map like flowers opening to the sun. Hundreds of them, and thousands ships, weapon platforms, defense stations all around the Coalition fleet, in the asteroid belt and the outer system tucked into the orbital debris field of Earth itself. When Valara asked numbly, some have been there for years, Admiral Santos said. Others moved into position while you were conducting your scans. Your sensors were looking for active power signatures, broadcast emissions, drive trails, all the conventional markers of military presence. We've developed stealth systems that eliminate all of those. You let us come here, Cal, then, said, understanding dawning in his scarred features. You knew we were coming. You could have struck first. Yes, Chen agreed. We could have, but that's not who we are. We believe in dialogue, High Arbiter. We believe in giving people choices even when we hold all the cards. So here's our proposal. He tapped his own tablet, and a new document appeared, shorter, simpler, written in perfect Coalition standard language. Earth requests formal recognition as a sovereign stellar nation with full autonomy. We're willing to establish diplomatic relations with the coalition, participate in mutual defense agreements, and engage in trade negotiations as equals. We have no interest in conquest or domination. We simply want the freedom to determine our own path. Shura stared at the document, at the reasonable terms, at the respectful language, at the choice being offered when no choice should exist. And if the coalition refuses, she asked, the 7 humans met her gaze with expressions that somehow combined sympathy and steel. Then we'll determine our own path anyway, Chen said quietly. But we prefer to do it as friends. Valera's communication implant chimed with an emergency frequency, the Infinite Decrees command deck. She activated it with a thought, and Captain Zircon's voice filled her auditory canal tight with barely controlled panic. High Orbiter, we have a situation. Recommend immediate extraction. Explain. Our tactical sensors are detecting massive power fluctuations throughout the system. Vessels was appearing, hundreds of them. They weren't there 30 seconds ago, and now they're everywhere. Valara looked at the humans across the table. None of them had moved. None of them looked surprised. They've been there the entire time, Captain, she said quietly. We just couldn't see them. High Arbiter, they have us boxed in. We're detecting targeting locks from his voice caught from 17 different firing solutions. If they have weapons comparable to their stealth technology. Stand down, Captain. All vessels maintain position. No aggressive actions. She closed the link and focused on Chen. You're making a mistake. The coalition has resources you cannot comprehend. Thousands of worlds, millions of ships. Even if you destroy this fleet, you have only invited annihilation. Director Chen said simply. Okonkwo's fingers danced across her tablet. The holographic display expanded, pushing beyond the Sol system's boundaries, rendering nearby stellar space in crystalline detail. Coalition patrol routes appeared as glowing lines, listening posts, as pulsing dots, military installations, as fortified clusters. Then the human assets appeared, ships. Hundreds of ships, not in Sol systems, scattered across dozens of systems lurking in asteroid fields, near coalition borders, drifting in the dark spaces between stars, positioned along every major trade route, within 50 light-years of Earth. These are our deep reconnaissance vessels, Okano explained. We've had them deployed for 18 years. They've been watching, listening, mapping. Every coalition military installation within 70 light-years of Earth has been surveilled. Well, we know where your ammunition depots are. We know which stations are undermanned. We know which commanders are competent and which are political appointees. Shara felt something she hadn't experienced in decades. Genuine fear. You're planning an invasion. Callan breathed. No, Admiral Santos said firmly. We're planning deterrence. There's a difference, she gestured to the display. High Orbiter, look at the positions. Every human vessel is positioned to monitor, not to strike. We could have sabotaged your installations, could have mined your trade routes, could have eliminated your listening posts. We didn't because we don't want war. Then what do you want? Belshera's buzz cracked. We want you to understand, Chen said, and his tone carried weight beyond his words. He'll understand that humanity didn't stumble into the galactic stage. We climbed here deliberately, carefully, and with full awareness of what we were entering. We watched how the coalition treats developing species. We saw the restrictions, the quotas, the systematic suppression of technological and territorial growth. We saw how you keep species dependent, manageable, controlled. Dr. Okoye pulled up another display, historical data worlds that had joined the coalition over the past millennium. Growth curves showing technological development, territorial expansion, population growth. Every single curve flattened after coalition integration. Every single species plateaued at exactly the level the coalition deemed acceptable. You don't guide species toward greatness, Dr. Okoye said. You ensure they never threaten your dominance. It's effective, it's stable, and we will not let it happen to us. You speak as if you have a choice, Torvis interjected, his crystalline voice sharp with desperation. You reveal your capabilities now, but the coalition will adapt. We'll prepare. Even if you destroy this fleet, you've given us intelligence on your technology, your strategies. Torvis Okonkwo's interruption was gentle. We haven't revealed our capabilities. We've revealed what we're willing to show you. The temperature in the room seemed to drop another 10 degrees. The vessels you are detecting, Admiral Santos continued, are our 3rd-generation stealth ships. We have 4th and 5th-generation designs in testing. The fold space technology Dr. Okoye mentioned, that's our 2nd fastest FTL system. And we have 2 more experimental drives that make fold space look like the Alcubierre derivation looks to you. Functional but outdated. Impossible, Velshara whispered. Species don't develop that quickly. There are physical limits, resource constraints, psychological barriers to rapid advancement. There are limits, Chen agreed. But you don't know where ours are, that's the point. You came here with intelligence, gathered by sensors and analysis designed to assess species that develop along predictable curves. Humanity doesn't fit those curves. Why the question burst from Shara. Why are you different? The humans exchanged glances again. Dr. Okoy spoke first. Because we had to be. Because we knew you were out there. We detected your signals when we were barely into our space age. Radio transmissions, quantum echoes. Our evidence of civilization spanning thousands of worlds. We knew we were entering a populated galaxy, knew we'd be assessed, judged, potentially subjugated. So we made a choice. Admiral Santos added, we could announce ourselves early hope for benevolence and risk becoming another controlled species. Or we could stay quiet, watch, learn, and emerge only when we could negotiate from strength. 42 years, Velshara said numbly. You've been hiding for 42 years, Longer Chen corrected. We've been detecting coalition transmissions for 70 years. We've had stealth observation capability for 42. We've been preparing for this conversation for longer than most of your crew has been alive. The holographic display shifted one final time. Earth appeared at the center. All but one now was surrounded by concentric rings of light. Defensive spheres, weapon platforms, fleet positions. Then the view pulled back, showing not just Earth, but humanity's true reach. Colonies and systems the Coalition didn't know were inhabited. Mining operations in nebula, thought too unstable for habitation. Research stations in the gravity wells of neutron stars. We're not a single system species hiding behind Earth, Okano said quietly. We're an interstellar civilization that's been operating in stealth for 2 generations. We have 17 colony worlds, 43 major orbital installations, and a population of 8 billion beyond Earth itself. While you were preparing to limit us to our home system, we were already building an empire. The word empire hung in the air like a blade. Oh, and your military capacity? Cal then asked, his warrior's instinct cutting through the shock. Your true capacity. Admiral Santos smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The 40 vessels you detected around Earth and Mars, those are our greeting fleet ships old enough that their loss wouldn't significantly impact our strategic position. Our actual defensive force numbers, over 3,000 vessels, ranging from scout ships to dreadnoughts, that make your infinite decree look like a patrol boat. 3,000, Vela repeated. The Coalition's entire military across 17 species barely fielded 5,000 ships of the line and growing, Santos confirmed. We launch 6 new ships per month. Our industrial capacity is significant. This is madness, Torvos said, his composed demeanor finally cracking. If the Coalition knows about this, if the member worlds discover a species has been building military power on this scale, they'll do what Chen asked, launch a punitive expedition. High Arbiter, how many ships can the Coalition afford to lose? Your intelligence indicates you're already stretched thin, maintaining border security and managing internal disputes. How many vessels can you commit to subduing a species that's been preparing for exactly that scenario for 4 decades? The silence was answer enough. Here's what's going to happen, Chen said, and his voice carried the weight of inevitability. You're going to return to Coalition space. You're going to report that Earth has requested sovereign status and that humanity has the capability to defend that status. You're going to recommend negotiation over conflict. And the Coalition is going to accept because the alternative is a war that will cost you thousands of ships, destabilize your political structure, and accomplish nothing except making an enemy of a species that until now has been perfectly content to stay in its own territory. You're threatening us, Veller said. No, Chen replied. We're offering you a choice, the same choice we could have taken from you, but didn't. You can have humanity as a neutral neighbor, a potential trade partner, perhaps eventually an ally. Or you can have us as an enemy who knows every weakness in your border defenses and has the technology to exploit them. We're hoping you'll choose wisely. Valera looked around the room at her delegation, pale and shaken at the humans, calm and implacable at the holographic displays showing a truth that rewrote everything she understood about first contact developing species and the Coalition's place in the galaxy. The Council will never accept this, she said. But the words felt hollow. The Council will do what's rational, Okano countered. That's what bureaucracies do when confronted with reality. They adapt. Admiral Santos stood, and the movement drew every eye. High Arbiter, your ships are free to leave whenever you choose. No one will stop you. No one will fire on you, because despite everything we've revealed, We're still hoping this ends in dialogue rather than conflict." She paused. "But make no mistake, if you come back with a battle fleet, we'll be ready. We've been ready for decades." Velshar activated her implant. "Captain Zircon, prepare the fleet for departure. We're leaving." "High Arbiter, what about the compliance documents?" She looked at the holographic terms floating in the air. 300 pages of restrictions that suddenly seemed laughable in their presumption. "Burn them," she said quietly. "We're taking Earth's counter-proposal to the High Council." As the coalition delegation stood to leave, Chen spoke one final time. "High Arbiter, for what it's worth, we meant what we said about friendship. Humanity has no interest in conquest or domination. We just want to be left alone to grow in our own way. If the coalition can accept that we can build something better than enforced compliance, we can build actual cooperation between equals." Velshara paused at the door. "And if we can't accept it," Chen's expression was genuinely sad, "then the galaxy is about to learn why you should never corner a species that's had 40 years to prepare for the worst." The coalition delegation walked through Geneva's halls past human security forces who watched with alert but non-threatening postures past windows showing a planet that had seemed so vulnerable just hours ago. Above them, their fleet waited in orbit, boxed in by vessels they couldn't see, targeted by weapons they couldn't comprehend, checkmated by a species they'd catastrophically underestimated. As Velshara's shuttle lifted from Earth's surface, she watched the planet shrink beneath her. Somewhere down there, 7 humans were probably already back to their regular work, confident in systems and strategies they'd spent 2 generations perfecting. The galaxy had rules about developing species. The galaxy had assumptions about primitive civilizations stumbling into the cosmic stage. Humanity, she realized, had never read those rules, and they'd spent 40 years making sure they'd never have to. The infinite decrees command deck was silent, except for the soft hum of systems and the occasional chirp of sensor data. Shura stood at the central command platform watching tactical displays that now seemed less like instruments of power and more like windows into her own ignorance. "Withdrawal course plotted, High Arbiter." Captain Zircon reported. His voice carried none of its usual military crispness. "The humans have cleared a corridor for our departure. All their vessels are maintaining position. No pursuit vectors, no weapon charging." "They don't need to pursue us," Cal then muttered from his station. "They know exactly where we're going." Veller didn't contradict him. The humans had demonstrated intelligence capabilities that made coalition security look like children playing at espionage. Of course they knew the route to coalition high command. They probably knew the council chamber seating arrangements. High Arbiter Torvos approached, his crystalline face reflecting the holographic displays and fractured rainbows. "I've been analyzing the data they showed us, cross-referencing with our own intelligence archives. If even half of what they revealed is accurate—" "It's accurate," Shara interrupted. "All of it. They had no reason to lie. Lies would only delay the inevitable, and they've been playing a long game for decades." "No, Tarias. Everything they showed us was truth. That's what makes it terrifying." The fleet began its departure. 23 vessels moving in formation away from Earth. On the tactical display, the human ships remained exactly where they were, a silent reminder that humanity had chosen to let them leave. Incoming transmission. The communications officer announced, "Coalition High Command. Emergency Council session has been convened. They're demanding immediate report." Of course they were. The moment the Infinite Decree had activated its quantum band communicator for departure clearance, every coalition intelligence asset within range had likely detected it. They'd know something had gone wrong. "Tell them we're en route," Belshara said. "Full briefing upon arrival." "High Arbiter, they're insisting on preliminary." "Tell them," Belshara's voice hardened, "and that this conversation requires secure facilities and full council presence. What we discovered on Earth changes everything." The communications officer palled, but relayed the message. Shara turned back to the viewport, watching Earth's stars shrink to just another point of light among billions. Behind them, humanity's true fleet remained invisible. A phantom armada that had redefined the balance of galactic power without firing a single shot, receiving multiple coded transmissions from other coalition vessels. Another officer reported, "The border fleets, the trade route, security forces, everyone's asking what happened." "Let them ask," Velshara said. "They'll know soon enough." 48 hours later, Velshara stood before the Coalition High Council in the Grand Assembly Hall on Velkar Prime. Had 57 representatives from 17 species sat in concentric circles, their attention focused on the central platform where she delivered her report. She'd spent the entire transit preparing her words, knowing that what she said here would ripple across the galaxy. To summarize, she said, reaching the conclusion of her briefing, Humanity possesses stealth technology that defeats our best sensors, encryption-breaking capability that compromises our most secure communications, intelligence networks that have mapped our territory in detail, and a military force that rivals our own. Despite being a single species, civilization confined to a 70 light-year sphere. The chamber erupted, voices overlapped in a dozen languages. Translators struggling to keep pace with the cacophony of disbelief, outrage, and fear. Impossible, shouted Counselor Thraw, a Vorthian military commander. A single species cannot achieve fourth and fifth era technology without guidance. The development curves. The development curves are wrong, Belshar interrupted, or at least they don't account for humanity. They detected us 70 years ago and have been preparing for contact ever since. They didn't stumble into the galactic stage. They snuck onto it and have been watching us from the shadows while we remained oblivious. High Chancellor Marathol, a Quellan elder who'd led the council for 60 years, raised one crystal in hand for silence. The chamber gradually quieted. You're certain of their claims? Marathol asked. They could be bluffing, exaggerating their capabilities to avoid subjugation. They demonstrated their capabilities, Belshara replied. Hana, they showed us real-time positions of our fleet deployments, classified intelligence on our internal political situations, and technical specifications of our stealth vessels. They've cracked our quantum encryption. They've mapped our territory, and their ships surrounded our entire fleet without us detecting them until they chose to reveal themselves. She paused. They weren't bluffing, High Chancellor. They were being merciful. The word merciful sent a fresh wave of muttering through the assembly. Then we mobilize, Thra declared, standing. We gather the full coalition fleet and demonstrate the price of deception. We cannot allow a species to develop this way in secret, in violation of every first contact protocol, and lose how many ships Belkara challenged. They've had 40 years to study our military doctrine, High Counselor Thra. 40 years to identify every weakness, every tactical pattern, every strategic vulnerability. They know which of our commanders are competent and which are political appointees. They know which stations are undermanned, which supply lines are stretched thin, which border defenses have gaps. If we go to war with humanity, it won't be the quick, decisive victory you're imagining. It will be a grinding, costly conflict against an enemy that knows us better than we know ourselves. She's right, said Counselor Beria, representing the scientific coalition. If their intelligence capabilities are as comprehensive as described, any military action would be tactically compromised before it began. They'd know our fleet movements before our own ships did. So we do nothing. Thrain's voice dripped with contempt. We let them dictate terms, accept their sovereignty, because they hid from us successfully. We negotiate, Morrill said quietly. The High Chancellor's voice carried weight that silenced even Thra. High Arbiter Velshara, you mentioned, they presented a counter-proposal. What were their terms? Shara activated the holographic display, bringing up the simple, elegant document humanity had offered. Full sovereign recognition, mutual non-aggression trade, and diplomatic relations on equal footing. They're not demanding tribute territory or subjugation of coalition worlds. And they simply want to be left alone to develop as they see fit. And we believe them, Counselor Josh, a skeptical Felinar asked. A species with this level of technological advancement and military capacity just wants to be left alone. Oh, that's what they all say before the expansion begins. Read their history, Valera said. She pulled up the cultural analysis her team had compiled. Humanity has a complicated relationship with empire. They've built them and they've torn them down. They've conquered and they've liberated. Their dominant philosophy for the past 2 centuries has centered on self-determination and sovereignty for themselves and others. They mean what they say about not wanting conquest. How can you be certain? Because they could have struck Burrs, Valera said simply. They've known about us for 70 years. They've had military superiority for at least 2 decades. They could have eliminated our border installations, crippled our infrastructure, and presented terms from a position of total dominance instead. Oh, they waited for us to come to them. They let us see their strength only when we threatened their freedom. That's not the behavior of an expansionist empire. That's the behavior of a species that genuinely wants to be left alone, but refuses to be subjugated. The council chamber fell silent. Representatives looked at each other at the datum, at the impossible situation humanity had created. There's another consideration, Vexia said slowly. If humanity has been operating in stealth for this long, what happens when other developing species learn it's possible? What happens to the coalition's entire first contact doctrine If species start hiding from us, building strength in secret, emerging only when they can resist integration, the implications rippled through the chamber. The coalition's power rested on controlling species during their vulnerable developmental stages if other species followed humanity's example. Then the age of enforced integration is over. Morthal said there was something like grief in the old Quinn's voice. The galaxy we built, the stability we maintained, it relied on being able to guide developing species before they could resist. Humanity has proven that's no longer guaranteed, so we surrender, Thura demanded. We accept the end of coalition primacy because one species got lucky. They didn't get lucky. Belshara said they were intelligent, patient, and strategic. And yes, Counselor Thra, we accept it because the alternative is a war we might not win. And even if we do win one, we'd be so weakened that every other species in the galaxy would see the coalition as vulnerable. We'd be inviting chaos. Morthal stood the movement, drawing every eye. The Council will vote on humanity's proposal. But before we do, I want everyone here to understand what we're really voting on. We're not just deciding Earth's status. We're deciding whether the coalition adapts to a new galactic reality or clings to an old paradigm that no longer applies. Humanity has changed the rules. The question is whether we're wise enough to accept that. The vote took 6 hours. Representatives argued, debated, formed blocks, and broke them. But in the end, the mathematics were simple. War was too costly, and humanity's terms were actually reasonable. The final count was 41 in favor of recognition, 12 against for abstaining. Humanity had won its sovereignty not through conquest, but through preparation, not through aggression, but through the credible threat of what they could do if forced. As the council session ended and representatives filed out, Velshara found herself standing alone in the grand chamber, staring at the holographic star map that dominated the central platform. Earth glowed there, a small yellow star system on the edge of coalition space, a system that had just rewritten 4,000 years of galactic politics without firing a shot. They gave us a choice, Torva said quietly, appearing beside her even when they didn't have to. That's what I keep coming back to. They could have destroyed us, humiliated us, dictated terms from absolute superiority. Instead, they offered partnership, and that is perhaps their most terrifying weapon of all. They're making us want to say yes. 3 months later, the first official diplomatic exchange took place, not on Earth or Velkar Prime, but at a neutral station humanity had constructed at the edge of their territory, a gleaming orbital platform they'd named Unity Point. Veller arrived with a small delegation, no fleet escort, no show of force. The humans had insisted on minimal security presence, and she'd agreed. After all, if they'd wanted to eliminate coalition leadership, they'd had countless opportunities over the past 40 years. Secretary General Chen met her at the airlock, the same calm composure in his eyes, but something else too. What might have been relief. "Hi, Arbiter," he said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome." Belshara clasped his hand. Oh, and feeling the warmth of human skin, the strength of the grip. "Secretary General, your station is impressive. We built it in 6 weeks," Chen said almost apologetically. "Wanted to have a proper meeting space for the treaty signing. 6 weeks. The coalition would have needed 6 months just to finalize the construction contracts." Shura filed that away with all the other reminders of humanity's capabilities. The treaty chamber was elegant in its simplicity. Around equal seating viewports showing the stars beyond. No hierarchy, no subjugation, just 2 sovereign powers negotiating as equals. Over the next 4 hours, they formalized what had been outlined in Geneva. Trade agreements, scientific exchange programs, mutual defense consultations, territorial boundaries. One, the coalition would recognize Earth's sphere of influence. Those 17 colony worlds humanity had built in secret would remain human. In exchange, humanity would respect coalition borders and commit to non-inference in internal coalition affairs. It was more than Shara had ever given a developing species. It was everything humanity had asked for. As the final documents were signed, both in holographic coalition standard and on human paper, a quaint touch Chen had insisted upon. Director Okonkwo approached Velshara privately. "There's something you should know," Okono said quietly, "about our intelligence capabilities." Shara felt her secondary hearts accelerate. "More revelations." "A confession," Okono corrected. "We showed you our surveillance networks, our decryption capabilities, our fleet deployments. All of that was real, but we also showed you everything we were willing to show. There are assets. We didn't reveal capabilities we kept in reserve. Not because we wanted to deceive you, but because trust is earned, not given." Belshara finished. "I understand. I'd have done the same." Okono smiled. "We thought you might, but we wanted you to know this partnership we're building, it can grow. Over time, as we prove ourselves to each other, we can share more, become more than just neighbors respecting boundaries, perhaps even allies, perhaps. Felshar agreed. Then more quietly, your species frightens us, Director. You must know that. We know we frighten ourselves sometimes. Okano looked out the viewport at the stars. 40 years ago, when we first detected coalition signals, there was a global debate on Earth. And as some wanted to announce ourselves, immediately hope for benevolence. Others wanted to hide, build strength, and emerge only when we could defend ourselves. The decision we made to stay hidden, to watch, to prepare it, changed us. Made us more paranoid, more militaristic than we might have otherwise been. And now we're hoping we can become something better. Use the strength we built for defense to instead build something constructive. That's why the treaty matters. High Arbiter. It's not just about Earth's freedom. It's about proving to ourselves that we didn't sacrifice our humanity in order to protect it. Before Velshara could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Her implant chimed with an emergency frequency. Coalition Border Station Delta 9 at one of the installations monitoring the neutral zone between Coalition and Krashatar space. We're detecting multiple Crasher battle groups crossing the border. The panicked Devo reported, they're ignoring hails and moving toward Velkar colony worlds. This is a full-scale invasion. Velar's blood went cold. The Ktar Dominion, a militant species that had rejected coalition membership and harbored expansionist ambitions. Intelligence had suggested they were planning something, but not this soon, not this large. She looked at Chen, ready to excuse herself, to rush back to command her forces to coordinate the defense of coalition space. But the human was already moving, his face grim. How many ships? Chen asked. We're detecting over 300 Krashatar vessels, the voice reported. The border fleet can't hold them. They'll break through within hours. Chen looked at Velshara, then at his own team. Admiral Santos had appeared from somewhere, her expression already shifting into combat assessment mode. Dr. Okoye was pulling up star charts. Director Okan Kwo was speaking rapidly into a communication device. High Arbiter Chen said the treaty we just signed includes a mutual defense clause. It doesn't activate for another 72 hours by the letter of the agreement. But I'm asking you, do you want our help now? Velar stared at him. You'd commit forces to defend coalition worlds. We've been at peace for less than a day. We've been preparing for 40 years to ensure we could defend our friends. Admiral Santos said, seems like a waste not to use that capability when it matters. The Krashar don't know about you. Velar said, her tactical mind already racing. They don't know about your stealth technology, your capabilities. If you intervened, they'd learn the same lesson you did. Jen finished that humanity doesn't bluff and our friends are protected. Velar looked around the room at these humans who had spent decades hiding from the galaxy, building strength in secret, preparing for the worst. And now, barely 3 months after revealing themselves, they were offering to defend the very civilization that had come to subjugate them. Why, she asked. Why would you risk your ships, your people, for coalition worlds? Because that's the galaxy we want to build, Chen said simply. One where sovereign species defend each other, where strength is used to protect, not to conquer. We spent 40 years becoming powerful enough to say no to you, and we'd like to spend the next 40 proving we can say yes to the right things. Velar made her decision in an instant. Admiral Santos, how quickly can your forces reach Delta 9? Santos checked her display. We have a task force 12 light-years away. They can be there in 40 minutes. 40 minutes. Coalition ships would need 6 hours to make that same transit. Humanity's fold space technology was even more advanced than they'd revealed. Do it. Fel said, coordinate with coalition forces. I'm authorizing full tactical integration. The next 3 hours were a masterclass in human capabilities. Velshara watched from Unity Point as human warships previously invisible to all coalition sensors appeared throughout the battle space. They didn't charge in guns blazing. They materialized precisely where they were needed and deploying with surgical precision that spoke of perfect intelligence and planning. The Kashtar fleet, expecting to overwhelm the undermanned coalition border forces, suddenly found themselves facing an unknown enemy with technology that made their own systems look primitive. Human vessels slipped through Krashatar formations like ghosts, targeting command ships with weapons that bypassed shields coalition scientists had thought impenetrable. It was over in 90 minutes. The Krashatar invasion broken, their fleet scattered, their commanders in panicked retreat. And humanity hadn't destroyed a single ship. They disabled them, captured them, forced surrender through overwhelming technological superiority without resorting to slaughter. As the battle reports came in, Shara stood at the viewport of Unity Point and watching human ships maintain defensive positions around coalition worlds. The vessels that had been phantoms, threats, unknowns just months ago were now guardians. Chen appeared beside her. Coalition casualties were minimal. Crushed, our forces are withdrawing. We've offered to return their disabled ship as once their crews are evacuated. You fought for us, Velshara said quietly. We came to subjugate you, and you fought for us. We fought for the galaxy we want, Chen corrected. One where species can be neighbors instead of subjects. Where strength protects the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. Where the age of domination, coalition, or otherwise is replaced by an age of cooperation. The galaxy won't know what to make of you, Good Jen said, and there was steel beneath the warmth in his voice. Let them be uncertain. Let them wonder what humanity will do next. As long as they're wondering, they're not assuming. And assumptions have been the problem all along. 6 months later, every major stellar nation had heard about Earth, about the species that hid for decades, that emerged with technology that rivaled the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, that defended coalition worlds against invasion, barely a day after signing a peace treaty. The request for diplomatic contact flooded in. Species that had been forced into coalition membership and inquired about Earth's path to sovereignty. Border nations asked about defense partnerships. Even the Crasher sent a cautious peace offering, terrified of the species that had dismantled their invasion without breaking a sweat. Shura watched it all from Velkar Prime. While in her position secured not through successful subjugation, but through successful negotiation, the High Council had learned what she'd known since Geneva. Humanity couldn't be controlled, only partnered with. She thought about Chen's words often about building a better galaxy, about strength used for protection rather than domination, about 40 years of preparation, leading not to conquest, but to something more revolutionary. Genuine cooperation between equals. The coalition was changing, would have to change. The model of enforced integration of keeping species dependent and managed was broken. Humanity had shattered it simply by proving there was another way. And perhaps, Velshara thought, as she reviewed another diplomatic request from a species asking about the Earth model of development, that was humanity's greatest weapon, and not their stealth technology, or their weapons, or their intelligence networks, but their audacity to imagine a different galaxy and the patience to make it real. On Earth, in the same Geneva Hall where humanity had objected to their subjugation, Secretary General Chen stood before the United Earth Assembly, delivering his report on the past 6 months of diplomatic activity. We are no longer hidden, he concluded. The galaxy knows we exist, knows what we're capable of, and more importantly, knows what we stand for. We didn't reveal ourselves to conquer. We revealed ourselves to be free. And in defending that freedom, both ours and others, we've shown the galaxy that there is an alternative to the old paradigms of dominance and submission. The coalition came to dictate Earth's future, he said, and echoing the words that had started this entire journey. Humanity objected. And in that objection, we didn't just secure our own freedom. We opened a door to something better, a galaxy where species choose their own paths, where strength defends rather than conquers, where 40 years of patience can change 4,000 years of precedent. He paused, looking out at the assembly, at the representatives of a species that had bet everything on their ability to stay hidden, stay patient, and emerge at the right moment. The aliens tried to dictate our future, Chen said quietly. We showed them that humanity's future, like all futures, belongs to those brave enough to claim it. The assembly rose in thunderous applause, but Chen's mind was already elsewhere, on the 17 colonies growing beyond Earth, on the partnerships forming with species who'd once seen humanity as primitive, on the unknown species that were surely watching even now, learning from Earth's example. Humanity had emerged from the shadows. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere in the dark spaces between stars, human ships maintained their watch. Guardian and explorer, defender, and friend. A species that had learned to hide but chose to stand. That built weapons but preferred peace. That spent 40 years preparing for the worst but hoping for the best. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human galactic partnership had begun. And the galaxy, whether it was ready or not, would have to accept that humanity had objected to subjugation and won. What do you think about this clash between alien arrogance and human power? Share your thoughts below, and remember to like and subscribe for more HFY stories.